one of the first thing that Spencer Cox did when he got into office was he signed something called the Utah Compact on Racial Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. As you can see, his name right here, Governor Spencer Cox. We're going to go up here. There's a lot of people. The Utah Compact on Racial Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. Declaration of 5 principles and actions to create equal opportunity. So right off the bat is these woke language that's being used. Let's go over here. This is Equity and Opportunity Progress and Accomplishments, utah.gov. One Utah. The One Utah Roadmap outlines policy priorities and suggested actions items based on campaign promises and stated goals of Governor Spencer J. Cox and Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson. The roadmap focuses on 6 key priorities, including Section 5, Equality and Opportunity, which highlights the administration's commitment to lead by example to improve racial and gender disparities in state government. So you can hear this language that's being used: gender disparities, racial disparities. So the roadmap they're talking about is right here, and it was his plan for his first 500 days in office. Governor Spencer Cox releases One Utah Roadmap, a plan for the first 500 days of the Cox-Henderson administration. So we come down right here, the number 5, equality and opportunity. Remember, somebody who's woke does not see equality and equity the same that we do. Okay? Let's see. Expand opportunity and improve life outcomes for people with historically and systemically, so listen to the language, less access to opportunity, including women, people of color, and LGBTQIA+ individuals. We recognize the unique inequities and varied experiences found within Black, Indigenous, Latino, /X, Asian, Middle Eastern, Pacific Islanders, and multiracial communities. We commit to creating initiatives that acknowledge the history of our state and nation, the disproportionate outcomes across systems, and the intersectional identities of our community members. So the language, they're focusing on these external identities and the language of systemically and oppressed and disadvantaged, all being used by Spencer Cox. So let's go back over here. Right here. Okay. So right here it says the Cox-Henderson administration believes that all Utahns should have equal opportunity and access to positive life outcomes. Personal attributes such as race, gender, nationality, religion, sexual orientation, and socioeconomic status are viewed as valuable human assets that strengthen Utah's diversity landscape and are key to sustaining Utah's growing economy. So there's the diversity that focuses on these external attributes or these external identities, and they believe that's key to sustaining Utah's growing economy. The administration acknowledges, however, that women, people of color, and LGBTQIA+ communities in Utah have unique historical, socio, cultural, and economic barriers preventing them from participating fully in our state. These barriers can be dismantled with thoughtful and cross-sector partnerships, proper systems restructure, and leadership buy-in across Utah state government. So, like I said, the language being used is very woke. that is very, very indicative of woke thoughts right there. The fact that women, people of color, LGBTQI plus community in Utah have been historically, they have barriers preventing them from participating fully in our state. Um, and then the idea that he wants to dismantle systems and restructure them in the government and in other things. And we're going to go over some of those other areas. It is important to note that the beauty and challenge of striving for true equality and opportunity is that every single department, division, executive leader, manager, and frontline staff member is called to advance efforts that consider historically undeserved, underrepresented, and systemically marginalized populations. It is only through a coordinated and collaborative approach between all of us that we can help set up a different course of outcomes. So the outcomes for people with historically and systemically less access to opportunity, including women, people of color, rural communities, and the LGBTQIA plus individuals. This work will require intentionality and commitment in order to see real transformation come to fruition to benefit all Utahns for generations to come. So when somebody who has these woke goggles or glasses on, when they talk about equality, uh, that means equality is, it's weird. The way they define things is weird. For example, let's look at the compact on racial um, okay, so number one out of the key ideas on there is acknowledgement and action. We acknowledge that racism exists and our actions make a difference. We call out racism wherever we see it and take purposeful steps to stop it. That sounds fantastic. I don't know anybody who wouldn't agree with that. However, if we put on the woke glasses and look at the world the way that somebody who is woke does, when we're referring to racism, oh, here. When we're referring to racism, okay, this is a .org. What is racism? Racism, a white supremacy system. Racism is different from a racial prejudice, hatred, or discrimination. Racism is when the power elite of one group, the white group, has the power to carry out systemic discrimination through the institutional policies and practices of the society while shaping the cultural beliefs and values that support those racist policies and practices. Racism to somebody who is woke, specifically to our world, is white racism. You can't necessarily be racist against a white person. That would be called reverse racism. And that's a legit definition that they believe in, is reverse racism. So if you look at the definition of racism, without the goggles, what we would understand racism as to be prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism by an individual, community, or institution against a person or people on the basis of their membership in a particular racial or ethnic group. That includes people who are white people. Okay? So somebody with the woke goggles on, their definition of racism is racist. It's racist against white people. You have to be racist in order to believe this definition of racism. It's very opposite and very dangerous way of thinking. So when I'm talking about or referring to, when we're talking about equality, somebody with the goggles of wokeism, if they have equality or they're defining equality, in order for true equality, you need equity. So you need equal outcome. You need to make up for the systemic history and oppression of a specific person or group. You need to make up for that and give them more so that they can catch up to somebody who has been privileged or not oppressed. So they have to be treated unequally and have unequal outcome in order for their idea of what equality is with equity to work. It's very dangerous and very backwards thinking. This is a huge, huge concern with the language that is used by Spencer Cox. Like I said, somebody who is woke is not necessarily a bad person. Just because somebody is woke does not equate to them being bad. Um, in fact, I think a lot of people who do have these woke goggles on are misled, and they have the best intentions. Wokeism is a very attractive and nice idea to think about. But when you look deeper into it, it is very dangerous, and that is why I think um, so deeply about it. And I think Governor Cox is a good man, but I do think he has these woke goggles on. And I'm going to point that out in some of these other examples. The first one being, okay, so I don't know if you guys remember in 2022, um, the HB 11, the bill that was vetoed, which was student eligibility and interscholastic activities. This was the bill that prevented trans people from participating in um, the gender that they identify as and participating in those sports. I think specifically it was for girls. Um, and Spencer Cox vetoed that bill. The bill was passed by the House and the Senate to stop trans men from participating in female sports. And Spencer Cox vetoed it. And he's released this letter to explain why he vetoed it. And we'll read some of it. Utah has a history of trying to approach complicated issues in ways that bring collaboration and fairness, from immigration and criminal justice reform to LGBTQ protections and religious freedom. Utah has often shown an unusual willingness to find new and compassionate ways to solve the most toxic debates of our time. For this reason, I was heartened and encouraged to see legislators sitting down with LGBTQ advocates to work on a compromise that would both protect women's sports and allow some participation for our most marginalized transgendered youth. No other state has done this, and we hoped that Utah could be the first. The concept was fairly simple. For the very small number of transgendered kids who are looking to find sense of connection and community without posing any threat to women's sports, the commission would allow participation. So what he's saying is there were talks between the legislature and some lobbyist groups or LGBT groups that were trying to find a compromise on allowing some participation of trans kids into girls' sports. And he was hoping for this. However, the committee would prohibit participation in the rare circumstance of an outlier who could pose a safety threat or dominate in a sport in a way that would eliminate competitive opportunities for biological females. He goes on to say that there were some compromises made, that they wanted to remove some troubling language. And then he goes on to say that on the last day of the legislative session, there was rumors of a fourth substitute bill that would be brought in. And essentially, this fourth bill He says it is important to note that a complete ban was never discussed, never contemplated, never debated, and never received any public input prior to the legislature passing the bill on the 45th and final night of the session. So he's upset that there was a complete ban on this bill. So if we continue on, he goes on to say some of the reasons why he vetoed was financial issues, legal issues for schools being sued. And then down here he says, finally, there's one more important reason for this veto. I must admit, I am not an expert on transgenderism. I struggle to understand so much of it, and the science is conflicting. When in doubt, however, I always try to err on the side of kindness, mercy, and compassion. I also try to get proximate, and I am learning so much from our transgender community. They are great kids who face enormous struggles. Here are the numbers that have most impacted my decision. 75,000 for 186.56. 75,000 high school kids participating in school Utah sports. 4 transgender kids playing in high school sports in Utah. 1 transgender student playing girl sports. 86% of trans youth reporting suicidality. 56% of trans youth having attempted suicide. 4 kids and only one of them playing girl sports. That's what all of this is about. Which, by the way, this is not what it's about. It's about setting the groundwork for more than just that. That's how it is right now. But with the ideology of wokeism spreading the way it is, it's about stopping things like that. 4 kids who aren't dominating or winning trophies or taking scholarships. 4 kids who are just trying to find some friends and feel like they are a part of something. 4 kids trying to get through each day. Rarely has so much fear and anger been directed at so few. I don't understand what they are going through or why they feel the way they do, but I want them to live. And all the research shows that even a little acceptance and connection can reduce suicidality significantly. For that reason, as much as any other, I have taken this action in the hope that we can continue to work together to find a better way. So, suicide among transgender kids. Transgender kids are oppressed and commit suicide because of it, because they can't play in the sport that they want to. There's a lot of caring and kindness, and I think that's where people get caught up in wokeism, and that's another reason why I feel like it's so dangerous. But like I said before, it is very dangerous, and it can lead to bad end games. So he vetoed HB 11, the transgender bill, and that ended up going through again by 2/3 of the legislature, and Spencer Cox couldn't do anything about it after that. Okay, there was an interview done by KSL. This was during COVID, and excuse me. And a guy called in to ask Governor Cox a question. So let's listen to it.
Hi, Governor. The Utah Jazz is excluding white children from consideration for their scholarship program. Do you think this is racist? And what will you do to prevent the Utah Jazz from acting in this racist manner?
Well, I don't think it's racist. In fact, I think it's in response to, unfortunately, some very difficult and racist injustices that have happened in our community for a long time. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do.
So, language again. He doesn't think it's racist to exclude people on the basis of the color of their skin, and then his reasoning is because of oppression, systemic oppression in our culture beforehand. That is wokeism right there. That is wokeism right there. Let's move on. in 2021, his first year as governor, he declared June as LGBTQ Pride Month. He declared in Utah that June was LGBTQ Pride Month, whereas the month of June is commonly celebrated and recognized as LGBTQ plus Pride Month, whereas we must encourage relevant and vital conversations about what it means to love each other, understand our differences, and support our LGBTQ plus friends and family members. Whereas we recognize that members of the LGBTQ plus community who do not feel loved and accepted experience higher rates of mental health challenges. So there's the oppression and the societal oppressions to them. And I'm not going to say people are treated bad. My whole thing is the goggles that are put on and the lack of critical thinking into different ideas. It is wrong to treat somebody based on gender, sex, all of those identities, because we're all God's children and we're all loved by Him equally, and we should all love each other equally. I fully believe that. My issue with wokeism is not that where we should treat each other equally and love each other equally. My issue with it is, like I said, the ideals that it puts into our heads that I've gone over already. Whereas we can strengthen resilience in the LGBTQ plus community through family and community inclusion and by providing access to help and giving them our support, respect, understanding, and friendship. Whereas we must cultivate a climate of inclusion and unconditional love for all. Whereas in the state of Utah, we strive to sustain a culture of hope, love, understanding, and respect by celebrating our common humanity, whereas we should all strive to be more inclusive and accepting of the LGBTQ plus community members, LGBTQ plus members of our community. Remember the language that's in here. Now, therefore, I, Spencer Cox, Governor of the great state of Utah, do hereby declare June 21st or June 2021 as LGBTQ plus Pride Month in Utah. Did the same thing in 2022, June of 2022. There was a little change in June of 2023. He left out LGBTQ plus, but he still declared it Pride Month. And just a couple weeks ago, he declared Utah as a month of bridge building. And that's different, but let's read what he says in there. Whereas we understand the shared human need for connection, kindness, understanding, and friendship. Whereas we recognize that a pluralistic society with differing ideas, people, and personal beliefs is foundational to the American experience. Whereas we recognize that differences between people can at times lead to misunderstandings, mistrust, and marginalization. Whereas June is commonly celebrated and recognized as Pride Month by many LGBTQ Utahns who have experienced marginalization and isolation as a result of their differences. There again, with those goggles on, seeing a community that is oppressed by society. Whereas we recognize that there are many Utahns, including those who do not identify with, celebrate, or support Pride celebrations, who nevertheless share the experience of being marginalized, rejected, or isolated. Whereas we seek for Utah to be a place where everyone feels welcome despite profound differences, seeking common ground and cultural values and center of understanding, dignity, and mutual respect. Whereas in Utah, we love our children and we hope to live in such a way that our children will forever love us, even if at times we may disagree over deeply held personal views or beliefs. That's true. We do need to love each other. Whereas we appreciate the numerous organizations in the state of Utah that actively promote greater understanding, cooperation, friendship, service. Whereas we honor the efforts of many involved with celebrations to build bridges of greater understanding. Kind of different. It's a little curious to me, suspicious to me, that the year that he is going to be running for re-election, he does not claim or recognize Utah that June is Pride Month. but he changes it to a month of bridge building. That is suspicious to me, as if he wants to um, pander to a certain group of people who may be conservatives, who will be voting for him in a couple weeks. So that's a little suspicious to me. Let's see. Okay. This one is a secondary source. I could not find any other place where they talk about this, like on a legit a government website, Utah government website. But it says, and if you watch the video, state lawmakers. While we have taken, what was I doing with this? Elected officials developing new K through 12 curriculum on diversity and inclusion. Researching and developing diversity and inclusion curriculum for Utah classrooms. I guess I can send the link and you guys can click on this. I'm not going to go too heavily into this because I could not find a primary source for it. So let's ignore that one for now. It might be true, it might not, but I'm not going to share it with you guys because I don't know. Okay, so this one is what the Cox Henderson administration accomplished in our first 500 days and what's next. So this is referring to what has been done. This is 500 days after he shared what he wanted to do in his first 500 days. So let's look at that. So if we come down here, okay, so yeah, they separate it for us. Quality and opportunity. We've recruited diverse candidates for board commission and judicial appointments. Now, especially in these areas, when we're talking about diverse, we want diverse ideals specifically. The ideals are what really should matter, not the external identities. So let's continue. There are more women, so there's an external identity serving in cabinet and senior staff positions now than ever before. Great that there's more women, as long as those women have diverse ideals and we can bring new ideas and to these positions. The fact that we're just highlighting women is one of the reasons why wokeism is sad to me. Hired the first senior advisor for equity and opportunity, first equity and inclusion accelerator, and first director of immigration integration. Language, equity. Equity, remember, we looked into equity. Equal outcomes, not equal opportunity or equal treatment. Eliminated barriers to opportunity through licensure reform, infrastructure, support mental health, and expanded parental leave for state employees. That one's not woke. Incorporated equity and opportunity in how we do business, including training, budgeting, and planning. Equity. Completed a gender pay gap study last year, resulting in the Division of Human Resources Management developing policies to address disparities, refine recruitment and promotion practices, sign legislation to make period products available in schools. Next, we're releasing the Equity and Opportunity Framework and an executive order to require state agencies to complete their action plan by January 2023 to track annual progress. Launching and expanding opportunities for women in Utah initiative with 2 campaigns. So, like I said, language. Look, with the goggles on, you can see the belief of societal oppression to these different identities. Wokeism, like I said. Let's go over here real quick. This is a MSN.com website. This is a secondary source. They do a good job at providing links to their primary source. So I'm going to click on the ones that do provide a primary source. Time magazine did recognize Governor Cox as the red state governor who's not afraid to be woke. So you guys can read that. I just wanted to point that out. I'm not crazy. He is recognized as being woke. Okay. MSN, their purpose for this article that they shared. Cox touted his actions on diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. Now he says university DEI statements border on evil. That is referring to a bill that he recently just signed that prevents DEI being taught in higher education, so like college and stuff like that. And apparently he was quoted as saying DEI is evil. When his language being used on DEI is so strong, and then he changes halfway through his governorship, because in 2023 achievements, that's what we just went over, his achievements on his 500 day include diversity. The article from Time was released on Cox about being woke. And then January 28th in 2023, Cox bans care for transgender youth. That was the bill that he signed, banning, affirming health care for transgender youth. That is not in line with being inclusive to the transgender community. Limiting how K-12 educators can discuss racism. That is not in line with wokeism, with woke ideals. That is not in line. He took out LGBTQ plus from that Pride Month declaration in 2023. We go to disempowering DEI bureaucrats. Fox retweeted an X post. Oh, we won't do that one. That one's not primary source. Attacking these diversity statements. Cox attacked diversity, equity, and inclusion programs at Utah colleges and university, repeating his assertion that such initiatives foster divisiveness instead of inclusivity. He called these diversity statements you have to sign to get hired awful, bordering on evil. This is a 180 from what he started out as when he first started as governor. And that is a concern of mine. That's a red flag to me and a concern of a politician who is pandering to who he thinks needs to hear what they need to hear at that time. So that is very worrisome to me and very concerning to me. That is all. I know that's a lot. But I think this is like I said, I think this is a very, very important topic to bring up when it comes to who's going to lead our state, because somebody who has or believes in woke ideologies or has these woke goggles on is somebody who I don't want to be in the governor office, to be the leader of our state. Not because I don't believe in what the true definition of these words mean, and believing in loving and caring about somebody. I am a Christian, and the ideology of Christianity is to love everyone like yourself, or like Christ would love you, which is an infinite love. So I'm not against wokeism for those reasons. I'm against wokeism again. I just want to make sure everybody understands, because it's a dangerous ideology that is just it's misleading. It's a very misleading and scary ideology. So anyways, if we go to Phil Lyman on DEI, so this has to do with education, but his language that he uses is something that I want to point at and make a note of.
Explore, and students can go and learn and explore and express their thoughts freely. Instead, they become a place of indoctrination, a place where conformity is demanded, where a high price is paid for stepping out of line, and it's really astonishing that in a state like Utah that we're having those kind of issues. The way to fix that is to just let those universities, let those institutions of higher education know that it's not going to be tolerated in Utah, that we do value free speech, we do value the free expression of opinions, and that those things make us stronger.
Okay, so he says we value free speech and we value the expression of opinions because we believe that makes us stronger. That right there is true diversity. The difference of opinions and being able to share that with each other and the belief that that makes us stronger, that is true diversity right there. So that's what I wanted to point out. Let's continue on here because he says some more that I like.
You know, one of the aspects of the American dream are functional families. We want our children to be happy. We want them to be social. And our public schools provide a place to go and to associate and to make friends and do those types of things that make them a better member of society. When we start to indoctrinate our kids, when we start to bring in ideologies, bring in material, introduce things like critical race theory, teaching them that they're inherently racist or they're inherently victims, we mess with that balance that should be free and natural and organic. Our schools have got to be a place where kids can go.
Okay, so right here it says inherently we want to stay away from things that teach them that they're inherently racist. He's referring to the woke definition of racism, where it's white people who are oppressing people of color. So he's saying inherently racist white people are not inherently racist, or that people are inherently victims. So that right there is a good, I think he makes a good point there that kind of helps me explain why another reason why I don't like wokeism is because it teaches people that they are victims. It teaches people victimhood. All right. So if we watch this video, what Phil says, we eliminated DEI in education statewide this year. Did we make the right move?
Yeah, again, it was being incorporated into our curriculum as a mandatory thing. You will have diversity, equity, and inclusion. I mean, I'm looking at it, it's like I like diversity, I like inclusion, I like equity. So why would I not like the DEI bill? It's because government is now saying all those things you like are now mandatory. It's kind of like Governor 2 weeks ago came out and said, hey, we're a charitable contribution state. Therefore, employers now must pay their employees 20 hours of paid leave so they can go do charity. It's like, okay, is that still charity then, if that's the case? And the same thing with the DEI. It's like, as soon as the government steps in and says this is now the law of the land, it's like, okay, that no longer feels like diversity, equity, inclusion. That feels like compulsion and control of people, and I hate that element of it. DEI as part of the curriculum was intended to be across the board, pervasive. It will be in math, it will be in shop class, it will be part of your PE class. It's got to be included in these things, and every element of your education has to include some aspect of diversity, equity, inclusion. Our kids are not getting as good of an education as they did 7-8 years ago, and the question is that deliberate? Are they intentionally trying to, you know, dumb down the education. You know, Common Core got beat up for that. It's like, oh, now everyone gets a trophy, and you know everybody's right, and your math problem is, you know, your feelings are more important than whether it's correct. And yeah, so DEI, if you're taking time out of the kids' schedule to do that, you're obviously, you know, that's time that could have been used elsewhere. I think maybe it's a little more calculated and nefarious than just time. It's like, you know, we're raising up a new generation of people who think very differently than their parents thought.
So he says it right there. It's an infectious ideology, wokeism is. So let's look at this other video. And I apologize. These videos are a lot longer than I wanted to, but there's so much information that I feel is important for you guys to know. And I hope you guys, I hope you guys feel um, like uh, you understand things a little better. If not, I'm sorry. But let's listen to this video. Do you think that we spend too much time on ideology, not enough time on core subjects?
You get, you know, 6-year-olds that are being, you know, taught, you know, to don't buy pizza from this place because they don't recycle their cardboard boxes. We had that with our little granddaughter the other night, and there's a part of me as I'm listening to some of the indoctrination going on and you know, virtue signaling, if you will, is like, that's good exposure. That's good for them to hear that. And I wanted her to tell the gal that was really just pouring on this indoctrination at an event that I wanted her to say, you know, I'm a Republican. You know, thanks for all that advice, but you know, at our house we eat elk and meat, and we shoot them, and we, you know, we live this life that's not quite as fuzzy as the environmental as the environmentalists, but it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for your kids to learn. So, bottom line, you know, ideology in the classroom. You're always going to have a certain amount of it. Parents have a right to pull their kids right out of that classroom and say, I'm not teaching my kid that. If you want to teach that gender is a fluid thing, don't do it in the public school. If you want to do it somewhere else in your own home or whatever, don't expect my kid to be a part of it. Or at least when they come home, we'll tell them the truth. And because I'm just talking as Phil Lyman. So if this is as governor, what would you do?
Yeah.
And, first thing is school choice. I would emphasize that parents can pull their kids, they can homeschool them, they can take them to charter school.
Okay, so that's more of the education side. I wanted you more to listen to his language that he uses. It's very different. It's very different in a lot of ways, but similar in the empathy and the love towards people. That to me is not different. He cares about people and people's right to do things how they want to or how they believe, and to treat people still with kindness. But the language that he uses and his ideology, you can tell by the way he speaks. It is not the same as Spencer. It is not a woke language that is used. So that is what I wanted to point out and really show the difference between the two. Obviously, as you can tell, I'm a fan of Phil Lyman. I like Phil Lyman. And this is one of the many reasons, and we're going to get into the other reasons here in just a minute. Just a second.